Welcome to the Midwestern Method podcast. Today, my guest is Brad Carson, just a really crazy, awesome guy that I've gotten to know through the Wim Hof Method circles. He's got an incredible story to tell, and I think you're really going to enjoy this podcast. Just a few things. If you want to take a look in the show notes below, I've got this thing going on with Base. It's a company that does functional medicine. And so basically, if you want to find out what your biomarkers are, if you really want to know what's happening on the inside, you have to check it. And so Base is this great system where they send you a testing kit. You can either prick your finger or you spit in a vial, and basically you send it in. It sets up with your phone, and then you get your information, and they give you some tips on how to improve these biomarkers. They even give you VIP treatment, and you get a consultation via the internet. So it doesn't matter where you live, now you can actually have functional medicine right at your doorstep. So I'm really excited about it. I've been using it, and if you want to try it too, take a look at the link below. You can use Jesse20. It's I'll have that in the show notes. That is a coupon code for 20% off your Base subscription. Also, check out Keon. I am using a lot of Keon products these days, so I've got a link in the box below. If you use, there's a coupon code down there. I believe it's Coomer, and you'll get 15% off on anything you buy from Keon. So all kinds of good stuff. And now, with all that said, though, I want to get to our show today. I think you're really going to like it. Brad Carson. Welcome to the Midwestern Method podcast. My name is Jesse, and I'm here with my friend Brad Carson. This is going to be a fun conversation, and the way that I can tell you for sure it's going to be a fun conversation is because I had to interrupt the conversation that was already happening.
The pre-podcast.
We were just started to get right into it, and then I was like, oh yeah, that's right. Let's do the podcast, I guess.
Turn on. Just gotta go. Ride it out. Ride the wave, man.
Exactly. But Brad is a really interesting person who I have had the pleasure of. I've shared the stage with Brad in last year in 2019, and then earlier this year, he and I we worked together in Poland, and just really have had a great time just kind of getting to bond with Brad. But Brad is one of these guys that has so much, like you can see, if for those of you who are watching the YouTube, you're going to see just an enormous amount of pieces of paper and framed things behind him. So I'm always impressed. And sometimes I'm like, geez, that's a lot of certifications, man. You're super pro, and he's still in
Glutton
school.
for punishment is what it is.
I know, seriously. I think about that sometimes. I'm like, Brad is still going strong right now in school. Tell me, just for our viewers, before we jump right back into what we were talking about and just go nuts, could you just give us a little introduction, like who you are, maybe what some of those things are there for? Why is it that you're hell-bent on all of this education? Who are you, man? Oh no, and it froze. It froze, right? Oh no,
we're back.
Okay, it's still recording.
Okay.
But for some reason, okay, I tell you what, why don't you just and then we'll just assume everything worked out.
Okay, do you have stuff to edit everything, or?
Yeah, I've got the software. I'm going to add something to the beginning and all that stuff too. So
okay.
Go right.
Cool. So a little bit of background information. And we talked about, my wall of fame behind, trying to make myself feel important. So I put all these things up on the wall behind me to remind myself, hey, I'm doing all right. It's a little bit of information about me. So my story, I can trace it back to literally the exact date and time. So September 11th, 2001, that happened. I was a junior in college. I, had the world figured out. I was, criminal justice major. I was on the, varsity track team and, running D1. And it was like, all right, I know what's going on. Then all of a sudden September 11th happens, and it was like, holy shit, everything that I was doing, like nothing mattered. And it was just like, okay, we need to, really make a change.
Right.
So I almost dropped out of college, ended up staying in, graduated a year later, and then went into the Marines as an officer. Amazing experience. Absolutely love the Marine Corps. Everything. I mean, we can talk for hours about all that stuff and everything that, that's taught me. But several things, the biggest things happened to me. I was injured in the Marines. I, broke my back, to make a real long story short, fell coming down a rope. I also had, some mental health issues dealing with one of my last positions. I was working at the Pentagon. I worked for, the Commonwealth Marine Corps. Again, amazing opportunity, seeing the sunrise over the Washington Monument in the morning from like the inside walls of the Pentagon. It was just beautiful.
Wow.
But then I also wrote all of the condolence letters for the entire Marine Corps. And, didn't realize the emotional toll it was taking. Back then, it was just, I'm tough. I'm a Marine. I'm not, gonna get upset. I'm just writing a letter, like, big deal. And, all of a sudden ended up getting out and was a mess for a long time, put on a lot of weight, fell into addiction and depression. And I mean, every, PTSD and everything just, piled on. And so for me, I started getting, a lot more into health, for my own benefit. Learning how to take care of myself was number one goal, number one priority. It's like, if you don't feel good mentally or physically, what the hell are we doing?
Right.
So then it's been kind of a personal mission over the past, several years, collecting, degrees and certifications. So I've gone from the strength and conditioning side of it. I'm a personal trainer. I'm a CSCS, which is a certified strength and conditioning specialist. So I've worked with, the former strength coach for the Red Sox and Bruins, Mike Boyle, great guy in Boston. Had another opportunity working at another place right outside Boston, Athletic Evolution, with Eric Kalanitis, was the former strength coach. Oh, excuse me. He's a strength coach now. He was a former captain of Syracuse football. Worked with a lot of pro athletes. It's just, amazing. You think you're in shape, and then you see some pro athlete like doing squats while standing on a balance ball while like juggling at the same time.
Right.
Like, all right, okay, this is just next level. And then, started getting more into, the other things that impacted health and wellness, and stumbled across Wim Hof Method.
Yeah.
Literally overheard two guys talking in the locker room about like doing push-ups, holding their breath, and, taking free. I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? So, dove into that and started just with that original online course.
Oh yeah.
Did you do the original course?
That's all that existed at the time. Was that for you too?
Yeah, it was like Wim and Bart in a basement and a couple other guys. And it was just, who is this guy? Like, what is going on? Is this legit? Like, I had never seen a YouTube video of him, never seen a podcast of him. All I had was this like, old VHS tape footage.
Oh, well, and for the longest time, really, in the States, there wasn't anything in English. Like, I always tell the story, whenever I first found out about Wim Hof, it was just this one article, and it was, and I clicked on it just as it was kind of like, you had sometimes, I don't know if you ever do this, where you get to the weird side of the internet, you just kind of want to see how weird you can get that day. And
you go down that rabbit hole. You never come back.
Like, okay, the tablets of Thoth and all these, the Akashic ruins and all the.
Hey, we can get into that too.
Ancient aliens and stuff, and then I clicked on this thing. It said, learn to control your immune system consciously. I'm like, let's
bullshit.
Get weird with it, And then it turned out to change my life, right?
Yeah.
It's just weird. But you overheard some people, and so you took the same course that I first took, the 10-week course.
Yeah, that original, and it's, halfway, you start watching it, you're like, do I really want to follow this guy? Like, what is going on? I had never seen any science behind it, nothing. And it was funny. So when I finished the 10-week course, the Saturday I was going to finish, Wim was going to be in New York City. And this is like 3 years ago, 3.5 years ago, 4 years ago, I don't remember. So anyway, so typical Marine, the thing starts at noon. I show up at 9 a.m. and I'm like the first, and there's nobody there. Cause again, this is before like Joe Rogan and, Aubrey Marcus and all these people are talking about Wim. So, I get there, I'm looking around the building. There's nobody there. I see people literally like setting up the stage and the scaffold and stuff. So I walk around back, and the parking lot, it has a gate to it, but the gate's open. So I stick my head around and I'm looking in, and who's sitting outside by himself, blowing up one of the giant 10-foot inflatable pools just with his mouth, sitting there like, because
like
obviously it's
something
Wim Hof.
yeah.
Like he doesn't need, who needs a pump?
Right.
So I walk over, I'm like, Wim. He's like, yeah. I said, do you need some help? He goes, yeah, man, blow up a pool. We got 4 more. And I'm like, okay. Like, thank God I had done the program. I probably would have passed out,
Right.
sitting there trying to just blow this pool with my mouth. And so we started talking, and then, I shared, my story with him with, using this for injuries and using this for, mental health benefits. And I had mentioned, and before I didn't even know anything about the instructor program. And I was like, I would love to do that, to work with you guys. Because at that workshop, it was Wim and Laura, his daughter. Brandon was there. Luke White.
Brandon Powell?
Brandon Powell, Luke White,
Okay.
Bart Biermans.
Okay.
And then there was like one other instructor, and he had he was still like going through the program, I think. And there were like 500 people. And so so I'm talking to Wim, and we're shooting the breeze, for hours as we're, literally helping them set up the food and all that. So I got to hang out with Wim and Laura.
Oh, that's awesome.
And so I mentioned the instructor room. He's like, great, you're in. I'm like, okay, cool, thank you. Like, and then he's like, you know how to do this. I'm like, well, yeah, I just did the 10-week course. I literally just finished. And he's like, great, you're teaching today. And I'm like, he's like, you get a pool, Brandon has a pool, Luke has a pool. And I'm like, what? Like, so my first workshop was, I wasn't an instructor, and it was with 500 people. So it's just, trial by fire.
You happened, I mean, this is all happenstance. I mean, you happened to show up early. You happened to bump into Wim Hof that day.
Yeah.
You happened to, of course, this is very much Wim, though. Wim is
of course.
the guy who's like, he's going to put you in a situation. You're like, okay, I don't know if I'm ready for this, but I guess I'm doing it,
Yeah. It was so funny. And even there was ABC News was there, and he's like, I want them to talk to you after they talk to me. I'm like, okay.
You told him your story, I guess.
I told him about, one of the injuries. I've broken both my arms twice each. I got a plate in one arm. I got, nerve damage down my legs, and my back is just destroyed.
Right.
And, I was talking to him about that, and I mentioned, about writing condolence letters, and it was funny. Wim was the first person who was like, oh man, like, talk about PTSD. And I was like, no, I don't have PTSD. Like, no, I don't. And he's like, that's PTSD. And it wasn't until years later, they, just recently changed my, so I have, I'm medically retired from all the injuries, and the Marines are like, okay, we screwed this one up.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it recently just got changed to, PTSD as a diagnosis for me, which is, strange to say, but almost a relief, because it's like, okay, all the depression, all the anxiety, everything that I was going through.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, that to me, because I had never meditated, I had never done yoga, like none of that. And so my first introduction to yoga was Wim. And it was so funny. So when I ended up, I'm doing the instructor course and, getting more into the science and all that stuff. So I said, well, I should probably go become a yoga instructor, just because I didn't know all the Sanskrit, like half the stuff, I'm talking to Wim. It's like talking to him is like talking to Yoda. And I'm just like, he speaks in like these sentence fragments. It's like, trust you must. I'm like, what? Like, just talk, man.
And sometimes I think he says things just to see what you're going to respond, how you're going to respond. I'll never forget one time he started talking. He started talking when we were out in San Jose. He started talking to there's this one person that was there, and they were doing like a documentary or something like that. And he started talking about, what is the, oh man, I can't think of it now. But it's about this one story, and it's Munchausen. It's, Baron von Munchausen, which is this old German story, from the 1800s, and it's a silly story where the guy can fly on, he can fly on like cannonballs, and the girl was like, oh really, wow. But I think he was kidding. I don't even know. And I was like, okay.
You never know. And that's the one thing I always say about Wim is he is the most genuine person I've ever met in my entire life.
Yeah, absolutely.
Most people, you're one way with your family, you're one way at work, you're one way with your friends.
Right.
It's like, nope, Wim is Wim. Like whatever pops into his head is going to come out of his mouth. So watch out. But it's amazing. So I started, I dove into yoga and did the yoga teacher training. I did a 200-hour, and it was so funny. I'll never forget that we're sitting there the first time. It's me and all women.
Yeah.
Just, I'm the guy in the yoga instructor class. And so we're going around and they're saying, let's talk about your injury history and then your yoga practice, like how long you've been practicing yoga. And so I'm just like laughing at this point. So they're going around the room and one girl is like, I don't really have any injuries and I've been practicing for, 20 years. And it's going around, like the shortest amount of time I think was 5 years.
Right.
And it gets to me and I go through like just a snippet of the injuries and they're looking at me like, are you okay to do this? And then so they say, well, how long have you been practicing? And I said, I've been to like 4 classes.
Right.
I've been to 4 yoga classes, like ever. And didn't know any of the like I knew like downward dog and child's pose.
Right. Yeah.
Everything else. And they're like, do you think you could do this? I'm like, I don't know. I've been practicing. I've been doing, the breath work and meditation for, a while now. And it was so funny because everyone typically in the West will start their yoga practice just with, the asanas or,
That's
typical.
Yeah, you'll start that.
Yes.
Way. Then you'll expand out. Right.
Yes. And I started, backwards according to Western tradition. But to me, it's the way that yoga was started. Like yoga has been around for, thousands of years. I love that you mentioned that, in your book, talking about, the history of yoga. And it's like, there we go. We'll talk about that in just a second. But yeah, the yoga's been around for 4,000 or 5,000 years, depending on which ancient text you're referring to. And again, it's been translated from, dead languages. But it wasn't the poses. The poses are only like 100 or so years old. It was like early 1900s when they started, really saying this pose will help you. And to me, I've taught yoga classes, here in the US, and I've gotten it's funny because when we were in Poland, I thought I got a much better reaction from the way that just doing a little bit of yoga, talking about, moving with your breath. And if you lose your breath in a pose, you're done that pose. Like come to child's, reset, regain your breath, try it again to get to the pose while you're, controlling your breath. You maintain your state of peace and calmness.
Yeah.
Because so many times now it's like jazzercise. People are like, I'm holding the pose. I'm holding. I'm doing. I'm like, you've lost already. Just stop. Just go into child's, gain your breath, and like, let's try that again. But yeah, you held up your book. So yes, congratulations to you, sir. So I will say about your book. So I just went through it. I've been through, go through every chapter. Didn't go into every single because there's so much in it. But I just, posted a little review. And to me, it's taking very complex processes, going into, neuroscience and psychology to physiology and exactly not only what's going on in your brain, but what's going on in your body and how you can start to influence these processes. And it breaks it down into, easy to understand, like I said, small digestible bites. Because if you're trying to say, okay, let's figure out neuroscience in an hour, like, good luck, man. But yeah, and then going into, the yoga stuff and, the evolutionary biology stuff. I'd love to hear more about that.
Well, thanks, man. And the thing is, I think it comes down to, there's a certain amount that I think is important to understand what you're doing so that it can benefit you. Like understanding some of the basic principles and why some things are the way they are, I think is really important. And then I think sometimes we get into the minutia a little too much, and sometimes, and it's like whenever we first became instructors of anything, I think, people watching or listening, I think we can all kind of relate to how whenever you fall in love with something and then someone is like, oh yeah, tell me a little bit about that. Like it's hard not to just completely try to download, like in the Matrix, Neo's like, I learned Kung Fu. You just got it downloaded into his.
Oh yeah, it's really that simple.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's so hard sometimes when you love something not to download every tiny little information into a conversation. And if you do that, you're overwhelmed, you're not helping someone, and it's not how any of us really learn. We learn simply, we learn the fundamentals, we learn the basics. And the thing is, what I try to do in the book, I think that anybody anybody who's already got a breathwork practice will benefit from it, because there's so many different facets of breathwork. And this is what we were talking about before we started recording today, because you and I, we both have a lot of the same interests. We both do a lot of weight training. It's this interesting combination here in the West, where there's a lot of things that a person might consider kind of macho, and then there's so many things that we're into that are incredibly like I guess just completely vulnerable, and this is I think one of the reasons why we connected in Poland is that combination, right? And
Sure.
And when it comes down to athletic training, when it comes to even just a level of anxiety that we carry with us just as we go around with life, you and I both have had our struggles with drugs and addiction, and it's easy to find a crutch, I think, and I think it's so liberating to find out, hey, guess what? You've got a lot more under your control than you think you do.
And with the drugs, you can get high on your own supply. So why would it's a lot cheaper? There's no hangover.
Perspective. And the thing is, whenever you take a drug, you're just eliciting the brain to create the chemical you want. You've got really the real dispensary is in your brain.
Yeah.
And what we can do with, and this is where I think, especially with yoga, and of course, it was so awesome. You led the yoga class, multiple different yoga and then guided meditation. Like, guys, I'm just saying, if you're in the East Coast, go to a workshop or something with Brad, because he's just incredibly good at putting you into that state. And the thing is with yoga, now I was more typical. I started with meditation. Well, I started with weight training and fitness, a lot of that. And then I kind of went into yoga and meditation. And then from there, some breath work, because I was really bad at meditation. And so I started going into the breath work from that point. But yeah, I think there's so much that a person can do if you understand the fundamentals of your physiology. Mm-hmm. Now, with the training that you do, you've got, of course, the yoga, and then you've also got the strength training. Mm-hmm. That's a pretty powerful combination.
Yeah, it's a balance. Like anything else in life, I not only like to balance my when I'm working to my rest time, but also just the balance of types of workouts that I'm actually doing. So to me, when I'm strength and conditioning training, or I like lifting weights, and I lift angry. I put on Eminem and Rage Against the Machine, and I'm like, getting every bit of frustration out of me. And to me, that's therapy. I mean, obviously.
I'm glad you said that, because this is something where I have this belief that I've kind of, I don't know, I'm going to run it past you, but I don't know, maybe we talked about it, but I do think there is a time that we as individuals need to kind of get the violence out of our system. There's a certain primal urge for, I think we all have this primal urge for violence. It's just kind of built into, if you think about human history, sure, it's obvious we're a violent creature. And so I think this is where oftentimes, like, for instance, I'll do the same thing. I used to say that if you could get like just a recording of a bunch of machine guns and and some heavy metal guitars, that's pretty much all I need to work out to, Yeah. And so like, I think sometimes I go into the gym, I get into that headspace, mm-hmm. And then I think it's really healthy. I see a lot of young kids, like, of course, I'm right now, okay, so the thing behind me, so this is not even my house or anything. This is my office at the university. My wife is busy she's doing her doctoral homework. I guess I'm just friends with, I like people who are constantly getting educated, I guess, Brad.
Apparently, that's the way to be.
But like, so she kicked me out, and so I'm here in my office, and but anyway, where was I going with that? What was I talking about? I started thinking about my wife, and then I
That's
got,
okay. We went over a couple different
and I
topics.
put the dishes
No,
away. And,
no.
yeah,
So it started with using that strength training to get out,
okay.
anger, frustration, just but it's being a man. I'm sorry, like I'm still a Marine. Like once a Marine, always a Marine. I can't get that out of me.
Right.
And I love it, but at the same time, if I don't find a channel or an avenue to use that anger, that frustration, that whatever, I'm gonna explode. And I think so many times, when I teach workshops, I say, if you suppress your emotions long enough, you're gonna end up depressed or you're gonna blow up.
Exactly, and I remember the train of thought. I finally remember,
Yeah.
this is exactly what I was going to be talking about. Is basically the fact that we have to learn to deal with this element of humanity, right? We have it within us, and oftentimes I go to the gym. I work out here at this university gym, and I'll see a lot of kids that are working out, and they're and all of the what I would say oftentimes we look at these behaviors as negative, right? So they're like, they're being very overtly, masculine. They're being overtly aggressive, and in kind of like the way they're walking, and maybe they'll even be kind of scowl on their face, and and sometimes us guys who are a little older, we look at them and we're like, oh man, okay, all right, cool kids,
But I've been, I mean, again, I've been that 20-year-old in the gym who's lifting weights, who's like trying to look tough. And now, I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm sure I look angry during the set, but then once I finish, I'm like, relaxed.
Well, and that's the thing. I think a lot of times a person will look at that, and sometimes I think people get intimidated by people whenever they see especially young men in the gym working out like that, and there's this whole, you can tell there's testosterone pumping in the gym, but I always think about this. I'm always so happy that they're there. This is something that I myself, I avoided all of I tried to just, instead of facing these primal urges and these things in my psyche, I tried to ignore them and avoid them, and it manifested in terrible, bad ways. These kids, as much as we might giggle a little bit, right? Because it's like, well, it's almost adorable to see these little guys, really, they're lifting too much weight, and they're, how it is. But it's one of those things where I'm so happy to see them there addressing this thing inside of us, training their bodies. It's so much better in the gym, getting it out of their system there than, I don't know, out in the streets or doing, anything else.
I was just going to bring that up too. It's like you look at everything that's going on in the world nowadays with, social justice, and don't get me wrong, all of these things are credible. They're issues that need to be addressed, but there are proper ways to address them, by getting out and voting, by changing laws, by looking at what we're doing. And there are improper ways, people who have so much, anger and hostility pent up inside that, and then it's leading to crazy things, riots and everything else. It's like, you never know. To me, if you don't express your emotion, whatever it is, if it's anger, if you have good, go punch a punching bag in the gym, go do some martial arts.
Oh my God, martial arts.
Don't take it out on someone else, because if you don't, you're going to explode and take it out in a way that's going to be unhealthy for everybody.
And this comes down to, I think, something that I know I've struggled with, and it's something that I am so happy that eventually, I started to really focus on this. And I think you and I, our stories have this in common, is that it's this certain degree of, you have to acknowledge, respect, and learn to control your emotional state, right? Mm-hmm. And this is something that, yes, there are some things that you can do on an intellectual level. I'm a big fan of the Stoic philosophy, and there's a lot of those things, but I do think there is something that you have to do. You have to engage your body. You have to, whether it is ice bathing. I mean, that right there is a humbler, right?
Sure. Every damn time.
I know of a story that just popped in my head. that you told me about how you were once humbled.
Oh yeah, my humbling
Oh my God.
cold exposure experience.
This one I want everybody to hear, because it's something that on this channel, of course, I talk about cold training all the time. You know, for those of you guys who are interested in getting really deep into cold training, obviously find a Wim Hof Method instructor, or take a look at the links below. I've got my ebook for a practical guide to cold training. But one of the ways that whenever I wrote that ebook, and it was, and whenever you go, and for instance, if you get training from Brad, you're going to learn from people who have pushed themselves beyond the limit.
Yes.
Tell the story. Tell it.
Okay. So there's a couple of disclaimers to this story. So the first disclaimer is this is, you know, after I started Wim Hof Method training. This is before I was an instructor, before I really knew what the hell I was doing and understand about, you know, checking my ego at the door being, you know, step number one in cold exposure. The second disclaimer is obviously don't do this. This is one of those stories of
don't do this.
This is what you should not be doing. So obviously it starts with, you know, gradual exposure to the cold. Get yourself in the hands of an expert, another instructor. Anyway, that all being said, the story. So I've been doing cold exposure regularly. You know, I have my meat freezer ice bathtub set up, doing it every morning, you know, a couple minutes, I'm good. My plan was, so I live on the East Coast, so you get the sunrise over the ocean at the beach. So my plan was on New Year's Day, so January 1st, I'm going to go to the ocean. I'm going to, you know, do a nice cold dip and watch the sunrise. Sounds like a great plan.
It sounds like a great plan. Yes.
So far that was, you know, a good plan. So I'm watching the weather, you know, prior to that week, and it's starting to get cold. And when I say cold, I mean really freaking cold.
Yeah.
So the air temperature at the beach when I got there in the morning was -7 degrees Fahrenheit.
Okay, we're going to have to do some conversions.
Yeah, for all the I get confused when we're talking about Celsius. It's like -7 million in Celsius.
It's really cold. Okay, so -7 Fahrenheit, and this is a problem that Brad and I had in Poland.
Yeah.
And I've had emails from people who are like, Jesse, you can do better than this. They've seen me struggle. And I
do you have your calculator out? Do you have a calculator to convert this?
Go ahead and do the Google thing. Okay, so -7 Fahrenheit in Celsius.
-7 degrees Fahrenheit.
Okay, that's -22 degrees Celsius. It sounds
okay. So it gets worse. So then with the wind chill that morning, it was -25 degrees Fahrenheit air temperature. So let's look at and we're not even talking the water yet. We haven't even gotten to the water.
Yeah.
So fucking cold. So it's like negative, you know, -70.
I mean, it's
so, or -60 in Celsius. Anyway, so it's cold. It's one of those when you walk outside, you take a deep breath, and immediately your nose hairs freeze.
Right.
That's when you know it's cold.
Weird freezing weather. Just for my
yeah. So we're gonna get. I didn't have a beard then, but
yeah.
I'm working on it.
Yeah, I like it.
This winter.
I like it.
Anyway, so the story. So I get to the beach. It's -25 with the wind chill air temperature. So I'm walking out there, and you know the sun is just starting to peak, and so I mean it's the water. I'd never seen this before. The ocean was actually like a giant slushy. It was just ice and slush. And the water, I have no idea what the water temperature, the air temperature was so cold, there was steam rising off of this water that has ice slush in it. So I'm like, that's gotta be cold. So I know what I'm doing. I'm staying calm. I'm focusing on my breathing. So I start walking out, I walk in, and it was kind of low tide. So it took me, a couple, 50 meters, 50 yards to walk out into the water, and I get under and I just dive in, and I go under and I stand up, and immediately when I stood up, I knew it was bad already because I was feeling warm. My body felt warm, and the water was a lot warmer than the air. So it was almost like I didn't want to get out because I knew it was going to be worse when I got out.
I got out. I hate that because you're stuck almost, and you just got the ice. So
Yeah, so I stand up, and immediately my hair was frozen, like completely frozen. Bathing suit completely frozen, like a brick. So I'm walking out, and I had my towel, I had a hooded sweatshirt, I have slip-on sneakers and whatever. By the time I walked to my towel, my hand, I couldn't use my hands, like zero blood on my hand. I mean, white, white hands. Couldn't use them. So at this point, I also knew I needed to get off my wet bathing suit,
Right.
which is interesting because it's sunrise on New Year's Day.
Oh boy.
At the beach, and so there's a line of cars there. Everyone's just sitting in their cars because they're not crazy. I'm the only person outside, but they're all sitting in their cars lined up watching this one person who dove in the ocean, who now has to get naked.
Suicide. He's
now
doing
has to get
suicide today. Great.
yeah. So I get off my wet bathing suit, I put on my pants, I put on my sweatshirt. At this point, my hands I couldn't feel my hands and feet at all, so I couldn't even get my shoes on. So I walked and I left my car running so that it was warm in there. My plan was to start doing some nice squeezes, some brown fat activation.
Right.
At that point, I also thought, okay, if I were to pass out from squeezing too much, because I'm clearly not, that's a really bad idea. So I just stayed calm, sat in the car for a little while, so I could get some feeling in my hands. I drove to a convenience store, a gas station that had, a Dunkin' Donuts coffee shop in it. So I got a coffee, and I was literally walking around the store because it was warm and I needed to keep moving my body.
Yeah.
And so after, 2 minutes, I'm literally doing, laps around the popcorn and candy rows. And they're like, "Are you okay?" Thinking I'm like crazy. And I'm like, "Well, no, I just went in the ocean. I'm just trying to warm up." And they're like, "You did what?" Like, do you know how cold? People are literally like running from the gas, like the car, to running into the store because the air is so, and with a coat on. And I just went, and they're like, "Oh," and it was, so yeah, it was bad. I definitely got, and it was funny, I got frostbite on the bottoms of my feet, just from walking on, the beach sand and having that being really cold. So, I mean, the whole bottom of my foot peeled off. I came, drove home, did a lukewarm bath, just to allow myself to warm up. But I mean, it was one of those experiences where it was dangerous. And one, I definitely should not have been there alone. But it was just, who's going to go with me when it's negative 25 to the beach? And I was like, well, I'm fine. But again, really should have, checked my ego several times. And when I got there, I should have said, well, I don't need to go in. But again, my ego is saying, "Oh, you're trained. Like, you can do this." And it was just like, I could do this, but should I at this point?
And that's the thing. So you were trained. That's the thing that I think is really important to even think about. A person who you had done regular ice bathing,
Sure.
and you were actually very well trained. You had the mindset. You understood the basics. You understood the inner fire breathing technique.
Sure.
That's a breathing technique that is incredibly complicated to get to pull off, and actually continuously make yourself feel warmer.
Sure.
So you have a lot of tools at your disposal. And
and that kept me alive. I mean, no exaggeration. Like, if I didn't know all the information, I would have died. Like, that's conditions that people would die in. And it's just like, again, I'm a Marine. I'm a little, I'm a glutton for punishment to an extent. I like working out hard, and people are probably like, "This guy's out of his damn mind." Like, what?
Well, do you remember when we had the, I don't actually, you don't live in the Midwest, so you don't remember this. We had these polar vortexes, and I know you guys have them out.
Yeah.
But we had this polar vortex that was going to bring the temperature. And again, guys, please don't email me and scold me for not remembering the Celsius thing.
We're Americans. Sorry.
Thomas, I know, I apologize. It's fun to apologize. It's kind of, I'm having fun. Anyway, okay, so this is how cold it was, all right? Negative 21 degrees Fahrenheit to Celsius. It's only 29 degrees Celsius. I don't get the math.
I don't understand the scale either. All I know is 32 is 0, right?
Yeah, just to reiterate, we had these two American guys here. We were over in Poland talking about how many feet, how many miles to go. With people from every other country. And I don't know why the United States, we're just like pretty much the only people in the planet that's like, no, let's do Fahrenheit. Let's stick with Fahrenheit. Well, let's do the imperial system. That sounds good. I don't know.
They tried to change the metric system, but they figured out it would have cost too much money because they would have to change like every single sign, like every sign on the highway that has to be changed to like kilometers to miles or something. We're just stubborn Americans. They tried to. I don't remember who the president was that started doing all that stuff.
I don't know, but But anyway, so just for those of you guys listening, just imagine these two Americans. We keep on trying to convey information, and of course, we feel like the bumbling idiots half the time. We're like, okay, you got your cell phone. What is this? So anyway, we're trying. It's just here in the States, we just never use those other things. And of course, I do because I've got the channel. But man, anyway.
Anyway, I disagree. We were the power duo. We're the powerful Americans in Poland leading a group together. And between our collective experience, I think we had every medical condition, every injury, every history. We had it all covered.
It was interesting. That is for sure. And of course, then we had Monica, who was this amazing Icelandic, or she's Scandinavian, ice swimmer.
Yeah, she lives in Norway now.
And just amazing, absolutely just incredibly talented. So we had a great team. But when it comes down to it, so you were talking about the frostbite on your feet, and that's something that that I really, whenever I get a lot of questions about cold training like outdoors, because I think a lot of people, and this is why I wrote the ebook. I don't know if I've ever sent you this ebook. I'd love to get your feedback.
Yeah, no, I haven't gone through the ebook.
I'll have to send you a copy sometime soon. After this, I'll send it to you. But, I'm in my second edition, and I'm going. Here's the thing. I'll make this promise on the air that I'm going to be turning it into an audiobook. I'm going to be working on audiobooks next, but I'm actually, what's weird is I'm really good at extemporaneously speaking, but reading aloud, and I'm an English professor, right?
Come on, man. You speak for a living. You get paid to speak in front of people.
I'm better at just off the cuff. But anyway,
exactly.
This polar vortex came into the Midwest, and it was all over the news. My wife, as soon as she heard I got this text. As soon as she heard about it in the news, she's like, I know what you're planning. and that was the first text. And I'm not cheating on you. And as a husband, it's like, what do you think I'm doing? I know what you're planning. I'm going to be so mad at you. And I was like, what did I do? And she's like, this polar vortex, I know what you're wanting to do. And she was right. So, this polar vortex was going to come in. It was going to be super, super cold. And I couldn't wait to go out and experience that. Well, she was really like, no, I don't want you to do this. You need to stay indoors. My mother, my dear old mother, she was like, Jesse, I just wanted to call. You're not planning on you're not planning on going out there in the cold, right? You've got a little sense about you. I'm like, not now, so.
Oh yeah.
But the thing is, I did, but it was one of those things where, and this is something that we have to coach, and cold trainers, we have to really take this seriously. And this is where, coming back to that conversation of ego and really learning to control your emotions and using the body, but also being in touch with that. I remember I walked outside whenever it was super, super cold. And, just opening the door, like everything was frozen. The door had a little bit of frozen because all the moisture in the air had frozen to something. And of course I walked outside in nothing but shorts. I was barefoot, and I just walked down the driveway and back just to kind of experience it, because I'd had enough moronic experiences in my day, that I was like,
we all have.
And since these people in my life were already saying I told you so before I did anything stupid, I was like, I'm not going to give them, the satisfaction. But I, just, as you walk down, whenever it's that cold, your feet are freezing on contact to the ground. Just the moisture is freezing.
Sure.
I was just like, okay, I have to be smart about this. And so I put shoes on, and I made sure to cover the extremities and all these things that I'd learned through trial and error. And of course, I post on Instagram or something like that. It was either Instagram or it might have been on YouTube, but people were commenting, it's like, well, why are you wearing a hat? you know, as if
All the internet trolls, they always have something to say.
diminished the cold
Yes.
experience. It's like, do you realize the hat is not hurting this cold experience? It's actually keeping my ears from freezing off, because the extremities, man. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't have to tell you. I don't have to tell you, but those extremities, they will get you. And the thing is, the just especially whenever it's funny, because at least water, you can't get in it whenever it's too cold, right? So because it's solid.
Yeah.
When you get into water, it's you know, like, it's funny because I remember whenever I was training with Wim, and we were in that first class in 2016. There were times we got into lakes and it was warmer in the lake than it was outside, you know.
Sure.
And yeah, I was like, and of course he wanted to, you know, he wanted to say some things, right? And sometimes Wim can
He can talk for a while.
he can talk for a little while. And we were all in our shorts and just completely as naked as possible, you know, and you know, there was a glaze of frost on all of the world at the time, you know, and I was like, boy, I can't wait to get in this freezing water. And I literally was like, man, that water is looking pretty good right now. So yeah, so it's one of those things. It's an ego. It's really, I think, one of the best things a person can do is train with something like that and learn temperance and you know, learn that to really temper that ego. Weight training, I think, is another one that can be like that. It's something where at some point you have to realize that you're not there to impress the other dudes at the gym.
Oh yeah.
You know, and I think anybody that's ever gone to the gym, and I think, you know, from a lot of the women that I've talked to, that they just don't want to be hassled, right? And I totally understand that, right? But a lot of the dudes will go in and they're looking at the other dudes lifting maybe a bigger weight or whatever, and they will, and I've done it too, try to, oh, well, I'm going to lift more than I really should, suffer injury and who knows what else, because there's that ego that says, you know, so this person I've never even met over here, who's probably a few years deeper into his training, you know, is lifting a heavier weight. And for those of you listening and watching, if you've not checked out Brad's Instagram, Brad does a pretty regular, this was what my workout was today.
Yeah. So I just started that. So I started doing something new. So I will be 40 in 6 months. Actually, well, 5 months now, because we're 1 month in. So
okay, I knew we were pretty much the same age. So let's see,
Yeah.
where am I on this? I'm December 18th. So I guess I'm a little older than you, just maybe like a month.
okay, yeah, because you're 40. You're 40 now.
No, I'll be 40 in December.
Oh, okay. So I'll be 40 in February. So I'm 8 months older, 10 months older than you. Anyway,
You're
yeah, that's
young,
good math.
right?
Yeah, there you go. No, older. I'll be 40 in February. You'll be 40 in December.
So you're the young whippersnapper here. I'm your elder.
You're doing math backwards. Oh, wait.
Well,
Okay, I know. I'm sorry. I'm doing it backwards. Never mind. You're right.
So we've also
Don't mind me. We can't do math. We can do
we're not
physiology and
math.
neuroscience. Math, no, not so much. Anyway.
When we were in Poland, at least we had the benefit of claiming that it was the lack of sleep, and now
Yes, and the Celsius to Fahrenheit. No, that has nothing. So anyway, yeah. So I just started, posting all the workouts. I typically work out Monday through Friday. I'll take the weekends off just to rest. But yeah, everything is on there. I'm just starting to, because in addition to your amazing book, I've been in the process of starting, compiling all the information and data for mine. So this is kind of, it started with, obviously I was really out of shape when COVID hit. I had been doing some workouts at home, but it was really sporadic. And so was at a place where, and it was funny because I posted a couple pictures when I first started. The people were like, "You're not out of shape. What the hell are you talking about?"
right.
But anyway, I've been there. It's even when I broke my back and got out of the Marines, I was like 220, 230 pounds.
Right.
Now I'm right around 160. So I've been there. It's like I know what it's like to be, overweight and trying to lose weight. I know what it's like to be underweight and trying to put on muscle. And again, I have a pretty diverse background. For that, I just enjoy doing it. And the other thing, it keeps me accountable as well. I mean, just putting it out there, knowing it's like, okay, I'm going to do a video today. I can't skimp on this workout because I'm going to have to say exactly what I did.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, and I actually really like, I like hearing your workouts. Like there was one day you did legs and you puked almost. And like, I was like, that's my boy. That's my boy. I really relate to that,
Yeah, and to me, it's like, we talk about, with the Wim Hof stuff and, yoga and meditation, that's all that's training your mind. To me, the mind is a lot more difficult to train than your body is. But through training your body, you can start to discipline and train your mind. It's a lot. I mean, it's not only going to the gym, it could be, doing something like fasting, which is obviously fantastic for your body, but it's a discipline. It's like learning how to not only tame your ego, but how do I feel? And I used to be that guy who, I say I get hangry or get mad when I'm hungry.
Yeah.
And now when I'm traveling and doing events, and especially when I do workshops, I normally don't eat. I won't eat that day until after the workshop's over. It's just easier.
Me too. But what I always find, it's crazy. Like the whole day, I don't even really think about eating. And then I'll make myself eat like a protein bar or just something during like the lunch break, just because I'm like, okay, I've noticed that if I don't eat at all, then I might kind of feel a little tired. But what happens is at the end of the workshop, I'm like, oh my God, I'm starving. What it like hits, at that point.
Yeah, but it's so funny because some of the things you talked about in the book, between sleep and all of these different things that help fasting is the simplest one. And even just intermittent fasting, doing a 14, 16-hour window, eating at, 6 p.m. and then, waiting and, skipping breakfast and then just going right to lunch. And the biggest thing with that is, so I'm sure you've probably mentioned this before. I mean, I looked through a bunch of your videos, but it's called cell autophagy. So meaning your body is eating the old cells and using those as energy. We don't have food. So the great thing about that is your body is so smart, it's going to eat or use up the diseased, damaged, broken cells first. So I hate, the term cleanses, now it's one of those woo-woo things. I'm going to take a cleanse. Like, no, you don't need to take anything. Just don't eat for a little while. It's like your Neolithic grandma story in the book. It's like grandma didn't know when her next meal was coming. So when she did come across a blueberry bush, she ate every damn berry off the bush because she doesn't know when her next meal's coming. But now you go to 7-Eleven, if you eat everything at 7-Eleven, you're going to be overweight and obese. It's like, you can't do that.
And I think that's one of the most difficult things for us as modern humans, and not to go on and on about the book, but let's talk a little bit about like, this is something that I think that we can both relate to is learning how to interpret these signals. And I call it messages from your Neolithic grandmother. Yeah. And we have, I want to honor those people and all of our ancestors. We're here as a result, so you did good, guys. I mean, thank you. The thing is, we've as a species, we adapted an enormous amount of our biochemistry is adapted to seek out things that were once in scarcity or that, and we don't have those same kind of drives for things that are good for us. Like I used to wonder, I was like, okay, so they're telling me that the stuff that I like to eat is bad, and then there's this other stuff that I don't really like to eat, but that's good, right? Now, why doesn't my brain give me the chemicals when I eat the stuff that's good for me, and why is it that my brain gives me the chemical? And so it took some research to figure out, okay, now I start to understand there's some biology here. And at one time, if it was sweet, it was rare. It was rare to find fruit, and it was also full of nutrition, right? At the time, we didn't have candy, we didn't have those things. And so it took a lot at least for me to figure out some of these mechanisms at play. And when you understand them, it's like, okay, well, of course, I'm going to feel like eating sweet and salty all day.
Sure. So I'm going to add one thing, and I'm not sure if this is in the book because I didn't go through every single detail. But the biggest thing too is your taste buds are being hacked by all of these companies who are producing these foods. They pay exorbitant amounts of money to have researchers look at which foods are going to be most addictive. They do things like pairing certain foods together. So it is a really quick example. If you go to a restaurant and you get, a steak, nice and put some salt on it, you get some French fries, and then you're thinking, oh, I couldn't eat anything else. I'm completely stuffed. I just had this giant steak and French fries. And then all of a sudden they say, do you want dessert? And now you're looking at ice cream and sweets, and you say, well, I could eat some ice cream or some cake, because your brain, but basically your digestive system will get, fatigued of one type of food. But then if you were to switch, you could actually eat more of that. It's what competitive eaters will do. Like the guys who eat, 70 hot dogs, they'll also they'll get in more, like something sweet, to then allow them to eat more of the salty thing. So your taste buds are being hacked by all these companies. It's like the whole, I bet you can't eat just one chip, or like you're looking at like how they're pairing these flavors. And it's this mindless eating. People sitting in front of a TV who are just, it's like, where'd the whole bag of Doritos go? It's just like, oh, Jesus, I ate the whole thing.
Right.
But yeah.
So much that is naturally addictive. And then whenever you get the modern science involved, I mean, we can really, it's amazing what we can do. And of course, we're suffering as a result. I didn't talk about that particular thing in the book, but you're absolutely right, and it's kind of sickening to think about just how purposeful these things are, in making these things addictive and so widespread. One of the things here in the United States, and I struggle with this, is caffeine addiction, using caffeine. And I think especially it's really pervaded the fitness world, because they have all of these delicious tasting pre-workouts and energy drinks and things like that. And I didn't realize just how specific it was to the United States until we went to Europe, and I didn't see anything like that. And here in the United States, if you think about first of all, if you think about what our Neolithic grandmother had as far as caffeine, it was barely anything, right? Really, when it comes to caffeine as a regular source of energy, it's a very modern invention. And then you get caffeine anhydrous, which is what's in most energy drinks or pre-workouts and things like that. And we can just decide how much to put in. It's not paired with, like, for instance, like green tea or things like that, with, like, for instance, L-theanine and all these other natural biochemicals that can kind of, and not to mention tannins, which is going to somewhat limit the amount of tea that you're going to drink, because you just get sick if you drink too much. No, we can make it down to, we can put it in a pill, we can have, all these other things. And, the average, I remember when Red Bull first came out. We're the same age. You remember Jolt too. Remember Jolt?
Oh yeah, Jolt Cola.
That was huge.
That's throwing it back a little bit, yeah.
We were little kids, and that had, a lot of caffeine in it, which, we're talking maybe 50 milligrams of caffeine. Yeah. And then came, Red Bull. It's going to give you wings. It had so much caffeine, it's going to give you wings. 88 milligrams of caffeine.
And let's mix that with a depressant like alcohol, and you're really
genius idea, right? And then, but now you go and you look at these energy drinks, these pre-workouts. I have not seen an energy drink or a pre-workout with less than 150 milligrams in it. And then most of them are going 300, 400 milligrams of caffeine in one drink.
Yeah, it's crazy. I don't really do caffeine. It's funny. That's why another reason why I do ice baths in the morning.
Yeah.
You won't need a cup of coffee after you jump into an ice bathtub. That to me is huge.
And that's one thing where I was kind of hooked whenever we went to Poland, and then there just wasn't the ample amounts of caffeine. And so I was really fortunate. It really helped me reduce. And then in March of this year, I was starting to get heartburn and stuff like that from coffee. So I just quit. And and I reduced my caffeine, and then basically I went caffeine free completely for about a month. And then just recently I've been having just like a cup of coffee, I've had, a little hot tea here and there, and it's like, wow,
it's funny because I'll probably do coffee maybe once or twice a week.
Yeah.
But I'll do it if like on a Sunday or something. It's not like okay, I need this. I don't like having anything where I feel like if I don't have this, then my body is going to be like, having coffee withdrawals or caffeine withdrawals.
A dependency is, I want to try to avoid dependency. That's, I feel like to be free, you shouldn't have to, being dependent and being free are two different things, right? And so I'm really working hard to try to make sure to try to manage the temptation to drink coffee every morning or, the things like that. But that's where breathwork comes into play. And that's where, there are techniques specifically that give you energy. And of course, hey, guess what? Hey,
there it is again.
but that's something that where when it comes down to, what caffeine is, what you can make your own adrenal response. You can put yourself into a sympathetic state. You can actually do this without chemicals. I love an ice bath in the morning. You are awake. You are ready.
There's no going back to bed after that. It's just not happening.
Exactly. You've made the commitment at that point. Yes. You put in the boats, you're going. And add that with breath work. There's so many different styles. There's some styles that are specifically for increasing energy. Some of the ones that I cover a few from pranayama, Bhastrika, Kapalabhati. There's other ones in there, some techniques that I try to cover. Some of them, one of them is called top triangle. There's a few other ones. And the thing is, what I found is that it's amazing just what breath regulation will do, just to be do those things for a while. And then you step back and you're like, oh, wow, that's real. That actually happened.
Yeah. I actually have a question for you with the breath regulation. So actually, I've been meaning to ask you about this. It's popped in my head. Cool. So going back to the strength and conditioning and the workout. Yeah. So obviously we both do, weights and do weight training.
Yes.
What specifically do you, if anything, do you do prior to sets or during a set or after a set? All three? Oh,
I love it. Yeah. So before I do any workouts, before I go to do a workout, and this changes depending on how I feel, but what I try to do before a workout, I will do either Bhastrika. So I'm really a big fan of Bhastrika. There's two different styles of Bhastrika that I describe in the book, but I tend to do the style of Bhastrika. And the funny thing is, I've learned it from two very good teachers. It's just that apparently two different schools. But basically, I like to do the one with the hands, with the arms and the hands, and that's my favorite one for. And of course, I'm going to do some weight training, right? So might as well get a little mobility, get a little warm up there.
Sure.
But that really helps with giving me a lot of energy. But it's not the kind of energy that is, like the caffeine energy. It's the kind of energy that I can go in there and I'm still focused. My heart rate is up, but it's not like it's thump, 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 right? Yeah. It's just, you're kind of opening up.
Yeah, more the flow state than that. Yeah.
Exactly. And I like the way that feels. I will oftentimes, after doing some Bhastrika, I'll also do maybe 3 rounds of Wim Hof Method style. The only problem is I don't like to do Wim Hof Method style breath work before I do weight training. And the reason for that is I think it's just that I feel so relaxed after it. I want to, and so I'll do some super ventilation, but I always end with something I call in the book, and I forget what page it's on, but it's in the chapter for energy, and I'll do some top triangle. And you can do that. The cool thing is with top triangle, you can do it just walking as you walk from your car to the gym. And so I'll do some of that, and then that's basically what I'll do beforehand. As I work out, I'm always going to really focus on nasal only breathing. I'm a big fan, and I'm not, and just because it's one of those things where I have so much room to work. I have so much that I need to work on myself. So I don't want to act like I'm finished, right? We're never finished for that.
Oh, absolutely.
But I try to always push my CO2 threshold. I always try to push myself where I'm feeling that. Now with the gym that I go to now, I have to wear a mask the entire time.
Oh, do you?
And
That's tough because you're
helps.
rebreathing in that same CO2 that you're blowing out, so you're making your body even, you know.
So and so this is and you know, I'm not making any kind of a statement or anything, you know, in this if you say anything about masks one way or another, people are going to jump down your throat. But what I will say is, if you're working on, if you're trying to put yourself in a state where you're working on your CO2 tolerance and you're trying to increase your CO2 tolerance, well, a mask actually is kind of helpful because you're not able to rid yourself of all the CO2 you're exhaling. So you're going to become that threshold is going to be tested much faster. So doing, you know, if I do some cardio, you know, I will feel that urge to breathe, and I have to really work on that as I do it. Now, when I'm doing my weight training, I didn't include this in the book, but I'll let you know. I'll tell you, I tend to do, I try to always exhale during the, now I'm going to have to ask you, what is, concentric eccentric. Right?
Yeah, eccentric is coming back. Yeah, the relaxation is eccentric. Concentric is when your muscles are contracting.
Right. See, okay. I am a personal trainer as well, but I sometimes get these things confused. Anyway,
that's okay.
So on concentric motions, I will exhale. On eccentric motions, I will inhale. And so that's backwards from some trainers. Some trainers are exactly the opposite. But what I try to do is I try to exhale whenever I'm exerting pressure and force. And what I have found is that helps keep my core stable. It's a good stabilizer for my core.
Oh, absolutely.
That's why I do that. And then now post-workout, and I describe this in the book, but post-workout I do so before my protein shake, all right, before whatever I do with my post-workout meal or anything like that, I go and I find a kind of a quiet place in the gym, and I put my headphones on. I switch the music from angry, I
do the same exact thing.
Okay, cool. Yeah, and I'll change to like hand pan music and just something with a nice chill tone. And then there's a 90-90 pose. It's in the book. I actually have a picture of myself doing it. Also, I do describe this. If you go to Testosterone Nation online, I wrote an article and you can read it. But basically, I go to that and I stay there in that pose and I do the breathing technique for getting into a parasympathetic state. And I do that for at least 5 minutes, possibly up to 10 minutes. It depends on a few things. The biggest thing that it depends on is, did I do HIIT? Is this how hard did I really push my nervous system, right? Did I really get into a serious fight or flight, or is it kind of typical? But I try to bring my heart rate down. And people can argue about whether or not that is a great way to measure whether or not you're in your parasympathetic or sympathetic. But by and large, it's a very simple way. If you're back into resting heart rate range, you're probably in your parasympathetic state. You're more likely to digest your post-workout meal. You're not in that stress state. Your hormones switch. You know, you're no longer producing all that cortisol and adrenaline. You're back into producing maybe some testosterone, which you know what? We're going to talk about this in a second. This is going a little longer than I was hoping, but I'm having fun.
Yeah, it's good conversation. I'm good. So
see, this is the thing. Whenever you haven't seen a friend for a while,
exactly.
Like, hey, let's.
And we like too much of the same stuff. So it's just,
So, but anyway, so I try, and I'm in. It's one of those you really can feel a state change, and I'm looking for that change in state, and that it takes practice, and you know how it works. Whenever it comes down to I'm not fight or flight anymore. I'm closer to taking a nap than I am. And you were just a second ago, off the wall, killing the gym. But okay, in a matter of 5 minutes, usually less, but about 5, maybe sometimes more, but about 5 minutes with the right breathing. And then I do a posture. I try to smile the whole time. I'm sending as many vagal signals as I can.
Yeah.
Then I leave the gym, try to be relaxed. And if I did caffeine, sometimes I'll do, now most of the time I don't, but if I did caffeine, maybe to get pumped up for the gym, I make sure the rest of the day I don't do any caffeine at all.
Yeah.
That's the only real time I'm going to do caffeine is before I work out anymore. Yep. I try not to, but I really try to bring it down. Then I'll have my post-workout shake or whatever it is I'm going to do. And I try to stay in that parasympathetic state.
Yeah.
Because, yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, I was going to say, it was funny because I was curious to see because I was assuming it was very similar to what I was doing. So I mean, whenever I get there, I mean, normally when I would do, Wim Hof Method breathing in the morning, jump in my ice bathtub, head to the gym. Normally I was going into the sauna in the gym, just up until the point, just before, like when you just start to sweat, so that I know my body is, fully warmed up. Once you break a sweat, it's like you're done, get out of the sauna. Obviously now a lot of saunas are closed, so I'm not doing that. But then I go into just foam rolling, so self-myofascial release. Yeah. But with that too, I'm focusing on slow, steady breathing. I don't count anymore, but if I had to guess, it's about 4, 5, 6 second inhale, equal amount exhale. Yeah. Because the other thing that happens with that too, specifically if you're stretching or you're foam rolling, you have what are called Golgi tendon organs, which are attached to your tendons, and then muscle spindles. Right inside, embedded in your muscle fibers that prevent you from pulling a muscle. So if you slow your breathing down, you're going to allow these to relax to get a better stretch, to get deeper into that muscle tissue. I always start with, fascial release, getting out some knots and kinks, but I can do that while I'm still calm, while I'm still, mindfully, staying present and peaceful. And then as soon as I go into like a dynamic warm up, and then it's like, change over, Rage Against the Machine or some like Cypress Hill or something crazy going. And then the big thing that I do, specifically when I'm lifting, is every time before each set, I'll just take 3 or 4 just kind of cleansing breaths, almost like a Wim Hof Method round, but I'm only doing, 3 or 4 breaths, just to calm myself, focus myself down for that set. In the set, obviously I'm focusing on, kind of, squeezing out, blowing out as I'm contracting, staying calm during the set. The big thing that I do as well, as soon as the set's over, I usually limit my rest time to, about a minute, depending on if I'm doing, pull-ups and squats, it might be, 90 seconds or something a little bit longer. Mm-hmm. What I like to do is, so if I have a minute rest, I'll take that rest time and split it in half. So if I have a minute rest for the first 30 seconds after I finish the set, and I'm going to failure, so I'm gassed a little bit. Yeah. Focusing more on blowing out, exhaling, just slow, steady breaths when I'm doing this. Mm-hmm. To get some of that CO2, buffer out some hydrogen ions so that I'm ready for the next set. So I'm doing that for, about 30 seconds. And then I'll kind of change over and then start doing some big inhales through the nose to get ready for the next set. And then I'm doing the same process, repeating as I'm going throughout. But to me, one, it's going to help your, your muscle endurance. It's not going to affect your overall power. It will affect your strength because you're able to do maybe that 1 or 2 more reps per set if you're breathing properly before, during, and after the set, getting ready for the next one. It's funny, I mentioned before I was watching football before, we got on the podcast, and it's so funny, you see athletes and they're, huffing and puffing, they even have the oxygen on their face and they're breathing wrong. They're not even taking like a full breath. I'm like, why aren't they doing this right?
Well, and this is something I see with a lot of athletes I train. They're in amazing shape. Mm-hmm. I'll test them when we first meet. I always do a CO2 tolerance test. Yep. But even before then, I always want to know, okay, I check their heart rate, and there'll be people, their heart rate is 50 or below. They're in that good of cardiovascular shape. Sure. Undefeated, in their whatever sport, mostly MMA guys and people that like that, mm-hmm. and just fantastic athletes. Mm-hmm. And then I'll test the CO2 tolerance, and it's barely there. And
Yeah.
then your breath wave. Okay, that's a lot of times it'll be paradoxical.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but I always try to tell a person, and sometimes, again, this is where our egos get into play. We want to hear, "Hey, everything's fine, you're
Sure.
off," you know. But I tell a person, "Well, look, you're a champion. You're operating at a very high level already. You're already really doing great.
Mm-hmm.
Look at this. You're doing great with like a flat tire.
Yeah.
You're doing great, and then there's these things that are lagging significantly, and if we just focus on these areas,
Mm-hmm.
just imagine how well you're going to do." And normally
Yeah.
whenever a person gets it explained that way, because that's for me, I've got deficiencies that I can see in the mirror, and then I've mobility has always been something that I've resisted. I think all, especially guys, resist it, but I think all human beings, we resist mobility until we have some injury that we have to fix.
Mm-hmm.
And you find these things, and you're like, wow, okay, I'm operating at a pretty good level already. If I just address my deficiencies, just imagine what's going to happen.
Yeah.
So yeah, I see, athletes a lot of times with improper breath waves, you're not even accessing those lower lobes, man.
Yeah.
That's
Everything. Just the pace of it. It's like it's like they're panic breathing, and while they're trying to recover after a set. It's like, so yeah, I mean, obviously that's huge. And then the other big thing that I do as well that you were doing with your workouts is I will make sure after I finish, I am taking some time to stretch, slowing my breathing down while I'm still in the gym. An important thing that you said, before I have my protein shake.
Yes.
Because if you're still in that, sympathetic fighter, you're still panicked, you're not going to be able to digest and use that anyway. So I make sure I'm, calming my system down. But then also, like we talked about, using the gym as that therapy session where I can be like, fuck you, wait, I'm going to get this energy out. But then before I even leave, I'm not taking any of that energy with me. I'm back down to, putting on some Enya or some, handpan music, and just jamming out as I'm stretching.
I feel like, you remember, the quote about it's better to be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war.
Yeah. Oh,
and
yeah.
I feel like that is what you're doing whenever you take those sessions seriously. You're honing that, you're walking out as the warrior in the garden, and you're honing that inner that we let anger build up, we let all these things. And I don't know how many people, so many people that I look at, and, I would say you're just a very level-headed person, and, you're very in touch with yourself. And it's like, yeah, if I don't go to the gym pretty regularly, there's things I do for therapy.
Yes. Oh, exactly. Yeah. That's what, when COVID hit, it was hard for me. And people were like, why are you so stressed? I'm like, I need to go throw some weights around. And I'm using bands at home. I'm like, these things, I'm ready to rip a band apart after 2 or 3 weeks of band. I filled up milk jugs, and I had them in a backpack, and I'm doing weighted squats with I'm lifting the couch. I'm like, anything I could possibly find that I'm like, I need to lift something, and I need to do it in an angry manner right now.
I hear you, man. I think COVID hit a lot of us really hard because it disrupted a lot of those positive outlets that people had for managing stress.
Yeah, and it was so funny to use that, the gardener in a war, warrior in a garden quote. I like to tell people, what I teach and what I do in terms of my coaching and everything that I'm doing, it's, learning how to cultivate that, having that warrior's heart with a philosopher's mind and a poet's soul, and finding the balance between, I can go to the gym and be angry at these weights, and then I can, come home and sit in an Epsom salt bath with a candle burning with some, meditation music going. And I love both of them equally.
It's that fullness, right? It's that wholeness. Any one of those things, if you take it just by itself, I think is lacking. And I want to, we're respectful of if you're not into weight training. It's not like, oh, wow. But, I think it's important for us all to get some kind of a physical challenge on a regular basis, engage that body in something that's challenging. My wife is a long distance runner, and, really, she got into ultra marathons and just, I'm like, how, I don't know how you can run this far, you know. And of course, we talk about injuries. I've got 2 torn meniscuses, right? And one of them I tore while trying to be the good husband. And I was like, I'm going to run with you. I'm going to train for a marathon too.
Oh no, don't blame your wife for that. That's
Well,
risky.
yeah, I should. Well, it was, I blame my stupidity because I was like, of course I applied. I've always been the kind of person, and this is something that, again, we learn virtue, hopefully, as we continue not to die. And one of the virtues I've had to really focus on is tempering my desire to overdo everything.
Yes.
You know? And so, you know, I was like, well, I'm first day I'm going to run, you know, insane amount of miles, and I didn't even have the right shoes, and I didn't know what it was.
Yeah, that's the problem when you start, you know, learning all this self-empowering stuff and understanding the Wim Hof Method and breathwork and meditation. You really start to understand that, you know, I can do anything. But then the next question becomes, should I do this? Like, just because I can doesn't mean it's a good idea.
Well, and I think you have to learn to respect I think you have to learn how to respect time and patience, because the body is going to perform for you as long as you're good to it. And same thing with the mind. What you put into your mind is, you know, is very important. And when you expect overnight results, you know, here in the West, we've really loved this one simple trick, clickbait stuff. Yeah. And I think that's one of the reasons why people get so turned off from fitness and health and wellness, is because they've learned so many times, you know. And so, you know, it takes time, but you celebrate the journey, right? You celebrate these milestones. It's like, I remember when I couldn't do a single pull-up. And pull-ups, you know, you see people on the movies and they pull themselves up and all these things.
It makes it look easy.
It makes it look easy, but it's a real challenge. And so I remember I was like, well, I guess I'll go over here and I'll do some pull-ups, I guess, you know. And I just hung onto the bar, and this is all that happened, you know. Like, okay, anytime now. And so recognizing that, okay, small changes over time pays off, you know, effort over time, that's the equation. And patience and being just thankful that you get to do it, right? Being thankful whenever you get sore and say, okay, well, there's some growth happening, or, you know.
Well, the problem is we live in a society where everything is instant. You know, you order something on Amazon and it's at your door like 30 seconds later. It's like you press the buy now. It's like, okay, I want it. Like, give me it.
Order this book.
And it'll show up at your door 10 seconds later, thanks to.
It is, and this is, again, part of that modern human condition, is that we're disconnected from this natural rhythm, because, well, you know, so much of growth comes from stress. And if you stress yourself too much, you cause irreparable damage. If you stress yourself just enough with time and patience, you become stronger. And, you know, and that's the principle of weight training, cold training, breath work, all of these things. So I got to ask you, since we're both turning 40, have you checked your testosterone?
Like, got my blood tested?
Yeah. Have you ever checked your testosterone?
No, I have not.
Okay. So I tested my testosterone. There's a company called Base that I'm using, and they reached out to me, and they do this functional medicine. So they check your testosterone. And so I was like, okay, I'm about to turn 40. I've tested my testosterone a few times since I've been 35. And it's always been a little low, lower than ideal. And so I tested it again with Base, and it's like 65% of ideal. So my goal, I'm like, okay, I've never really messed with it before. I've always felt like I never had any of the symptoms of low testosterone. You know, my confidence is fine. My muscle and fat, you know, I've never had any issues there. But I'm like, you know what? Again, coming back to finding our deficiencies and you know, trying to say, okay, well, if I'm doing this well with the deficiency, just imagine how well we could do. I don't know. I often wonder, 'cause you don't know until you test it.
Sure.
But, I don't
No,
know.
I haven't gotten to, it's funny because I mean, I'll look at every aspect of my health
Yeah.
from, tracking my sleep, tracking my heart rate variability, tracking, so I think I have a good base of, where I'm at. And to me, as long as I don't feel like I'm lacking, I mean, sure. Can I do the same workouts that I was doing when I was, 24 in the Marines? It's like, no, back then it's like you could drink, 12 beers at night, go out for a run in the morning and then go lift weights and then you're fine.
Yeah. Do it all again the next.
Exactly. So I mean, the biggest thing I've noticed just with recovery time, normally my ideal, if I'm lifting, I'll just do 2 days off. Normally I'll do Monday, Tuesday, 2 days on. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, a rest recovery yoga day, and then lifting Thursday, Friday. And then I have 2 days in between.
Yeah.
And then I'm, lifting different body parts, different muscle groups. But to me, that's, that's worked out for me. I used to love lifting, 5 days a week. That's not happening anymore. And even this, I think it's cycling the workouts too. Like even this week, I just did 3 days.
Right.
Just taking some time off.
I still do 5 days a week lifting, and then I'll usually do 4 days where I do cardio with those lifting times as well. Then I take the weekends off, and I feel like it's weird. It's just kind of weird. I think really it comes down to I've always been a nervous energy kind of guy, and I think, of course, back in my earlier days, I didn't know how to manage it.
Sure.
So I'm just making it known to you. You can ask me about it when you turn 40, right? First of all, I'm going to turn 40 first. So
Yes, you are. Yeah, don't mind me. I forgot what month it was. Like,
on
what
my
day is it?
podcast.
What month is it?
It's good. We're going to have an extravaganza.
Sounds good, man. I'm in.
But my goal here, I'm trying to make it to where it's out on the waves, out in the world, so people you're going to hold me to it. My goal is to bring my testosterone up. One of the things I'm going to do is apply breath work to it, and I think it's specifically something that it's just the way I manage stress. So I'm actually going to be applying more breath work than I have even thus far in my life, because literally the way you breathe affects, your hormones. And so I am going to be doing that a lot more. And so there is that's, and the thing is, so I wonder how, I mean, if I'm at 65%, I mean, dude, I wonder how I'll feel whenever I'm at 100%.
This is somewhat of I don't know the answer to this. So can you get it back up to 100% for where you are at your age? Is it like 100% for your age range, or is it compared to 25-year-old?
It's basically like where the ideal level is for a male. And I don't know, I think they're taking into account that I'm not 18, right?
Okay, as long as it's age. I didn't know if you were saying you're trying to get back to, where your testosterone was when you were roaring 20. That would be fantastic.
That would be wonderful and scary at the same time.
I think that'd be too. That's like going out with a loaded gun every day. It's just too much. You need to calm down.
Yeah, that's like getting on the roids, or something. Dude,
yeah, no, thank you.
Yeah. Anyway, we could go on and on forever, and I'm going to have you back probably sometime this coming week, just because.
Definitely, man. And I said this before. We should just start a regular thing. I wanted to get into the podcast thing, and then to me, I don't like talking just to the camera. I mean, I'll do my workouts and whatnot, but It's so much more fun just to like have this kind of conversation. And to me, we just scratch the surface. We could talk about, so many different things.
I think one of the things I really want to talk about next time, and just a teaser for next time, is I do want to talk about yoga and weight training, and I think that's just an insanely powerful combination. So, but that's our teaser for next time.
Awesome.
Thanks so much, Brad Carson. If people are looking for you, where can they find you, and what are you doing these days?
All the typical, Instaface places. It's at Limitless Brad on Instagram, and my website is ltbradcarson.com. So lieutenantbradcarson.com. Feel free to reach out to me. I'm always eager to help anyone in any way that I can, because we talked about, we've been there.
Yeah.
to where, you know, we've been struggling. So it's nice to be in a place where you can give back. And again, congratulations to you on the book.
Hey, thanks.
It's awesome. If you guys are interested, get it. There's so much information. It's really easy to understand. And I don't blow smoke, so I wouldn't be. It's funny because I was nervous about doing it. I wanted to make sure I had the book read first, just in case I can't give out a review until I've gone through it. But yeah, amazing stuff. Thanks again, bud.
I appreciate that a lot, man. So thanks so much for being on the show, and I look forward to having you back again. Guys, take a look at the links below, and you can check out Brad at all those links. If you haven't joined my Patreon club, what are you doing? Join my Patreon club, the Breath Club. Every month we do around three new guided breathing sessions, and you're going to recognize some things that I talk about in the book, and you're going to say, hey, oh, cool, I know what this is doing now that I've read the book. So take a look at that, links below. The book is a practical guide to breath work. It is available on Amazon right now, so check that out. Guys, thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to go out there and be kind to one another.